It's one of those rare topics on which left and right, Republicans and Democrats, mostly agree. The American middle class is in trouble. The number of upper-income families has expanded, while the middle class has been in steady decline. Should we worry about this trend, and can it be reversed? It's our subject tonight, the American middle class. From Detroit, this is The Business of Life. Michael Moynihan, welcome to The Business of Life, coming to you this week from the Detroit Masonic Temple. If you're watching this program, chances are you identify as a member of the middle class, because almost all Americans do. With all this talk of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, are you in danger of falling out of the middle class? And is the chance at a middle class life, that foundational American ideal, disappearing? Today we're going to find out. And as always, we'll break down the issue using facts, figures, dollars, and cents. And I'm joined by a panel of experts desperate to answer the question, what happened to the middle class? So let's meet them. David Madland, Managing Director of Economic Policy at the Center for American Progress, and the author of this brand spanking new book, Hollowed Out: Why the Economy Doesn't Work Without a Strong Middle Class. Welcome, David. Detroit native Charlie LeDuff is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author of the New York Times bestseller, Detroit, An American Autopsy. And in 2013, he was named GQ's Madman of the Year. It's true.
Can I have that card?
You can. I'm going to sign it for us after. And Shikha Dalmia is a senior analyst at the Reason Foundation, previously an editorial writer at the Detroit News, and she's currently a columnist for The Week magazine. Welcome, all of you. And let's begin with our first topic. What is the middle class? And before I ask this distinguished panel, how many people here consider themselves members of the middle class? Anyone? Most people, right? As expected, which transitions very nicely into our first number. 9 out of 10, that's the number of Americans who would describe themselves as middle class. But 40% of American families couldn't raise $2,000 in the event of an emergency. David, it's in the title of your book, Strong Middle Class. What is the middle class? Define it for us. Everybody has a different definition, and I need one from you.
There's no one perfect definition, but it's a level of income. It's also a reasonable range where you're close enough to the rich and close enough to the poor, and it's the ability to buy some basic goods like healthcare and housing, and some kind of aspirational goods that you think about the future. You can have a good education for your children. You can maybe retire, afford a vacation. So it's this combination of things, and the idea that if you, through your hard work, your life and your kids' life can be better.
All right, let's look at our next number. According to the Commerce Department, there are 6 goods that, quote, most middle-class families value and wish to attain. These goods are home ownership, college education for children, health care, 2 cars, family vacations, and retirement security. I am not one who trusts the Commerce Department to tell me what the 6 goods that I desire. Does anyone have like an enormous problem with this list of 6 things? You right there sitting down, you have an amendment or a problem with this list.
Yeah, I don't have particular things that I would put on the list, but I do notice that the list is relative, and this is relative to middle class that's wealthier than the middle class that I'm used to. Like for someone who's in the neighborhoods in Detroit, or I'm from Flint, someone in Flint, like this isn't a middle class list. This is a rich person's list.
What in particular? Would be a family vacation?
We're not thinking about family vacation. That's off the list.
Right.
Home ownership, off the list. College education for children, probably off the list. Healthcare might be on the list. Retirement security, off the list. 2 cars, off the list. Maybe 1 car, maybe a good place to rent, just maybe some stability in some way. Maybe a job.
You raised your hand and identified as a member of the middle class, right?
Yes.
Okay, but with all those things off the list, you still consider yourself a member of the middle class?
Yes. Relatively.
All right, well, let's build on that point and bring up the next number. 1 in 5. That's the number of middle-class Americans who would rather die early than not earn enough to live comfortably in retirement. Isn't it something rather different that the middle class is having a difficult time putting any money away now?
Yeah, it's deeply frightening because the way we do retirement now has radically changed over the past 30, 40 years. You used to have this basic idea of a pension where if you work hard, your company's contributing to it, and when you retire, it'll be there for you no matter how long you live. Now, you got a 401k, and it's up to you. You're supposed to figure out how long you're gonna live, how much money you're supposed to put away every year, and how to invest it.
Who here is actually saving money? I mean, I ask this because I don't save money.
Right there, dude.
I can't afford to save money. I
make sure I do.
You're saving money. Let me ask you, do you consider yourself middle class?
I do. I consider myself and my family middle class.
And you are saving money?
I am. I've been saving money since I was 13. The American savings rate is between 5% and 7%, as opposed to Japanese people who save 20% of their income.
I want to point out quickly that the Business of Life audiences know those things off the top of their heads. How much the Japanese are saving. Isn't this a function of just a collapsing economy?
No,
or have Americans always been bad at this sort of thing?
No, I think it's a collapse in the mentality of Americans who like to spend. I mean, Americans are famous for their profligacy. I mean, they like to spend. Look, like I said, I grew up in India, where people don't have any publicly provided social security. They have to save for their children's education. They have to save for their own retirement. And they make meager, money. The problem is Americans have lost the habit of saving.
I want to point out that David was huffing. There was an audible huff during that exchange.
Yeah, I was a little frustrated. I think you're kind of blaming the victim here. Certainly, everyone here probably knows someone who's, wasteful with their money and is not saving just because of personal choice. But really, the basic story here over the past several decades is that wages have been stagnant and the price of basic middle class goods like housing and healthcare and education have gone through the roof. So people have had to go into debt to afford what a middle class lifestyle. So they don't have money to put away. It's not just about a few people's choices. It's about the kind of things that we should be able to afford, we can't afford now, and that makes it much, much harder to save.
Words like should be able to save. That's part of the problem with Americans is that they think that there's an entitlement. They should be able to do X. They should be able to do Y. That's not how the rest of the world operates.
Look,
they have certain needs and they make sensible decisions.
But I'm up to here with it already. I'm up to here with it.
I'm going to let this happen.
I don't want to talk about statistics. We're human beings, right? We used to have a way of life. It's gone. And then you're like, well, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, but you're
talk
not
about
going
statistics.
to get it.
People aren't eating in this goddamn city.
You're not going to get it back by saying I need
you
to
go
have
tell
this
them.
now.
You go tell them.
The one other thing that I think is really important here is it's not like we're not a richer society. We are richer. We have a chance to create the wealth for everyone, but instead we've funneled it up to the very top. That's what's happened and why most people can't save.
All right, let's look at this next number, which localizes this issue a little bit. Households that earn between 67 and 200% of a state's median income are considered middle class. The median income in Michigan is about $48,000 a year, putting the percentage of middle class families in this state, where we are shooting now, at 46%.
I'll give you a number. You want a couple numbers? Here's a number. The American median household income started declining. We haven't had an uptick in the year 2000. That's about 5 years after NAFTA. We lost 800,000 manufacturing jobs here. Detroit goes down the toilet. The rest of the country goes down the toilet. We made stuff. We don't make stuff.
Let's not sentimentalize Detroit too much. The auto industry is alive and well in this country. It is just not in Michigan, and it's just not in Detroit.
Not?
In Detroit, not a single foreign maker has ever come and set up a factory. They're all going to Tennessee, Alabama, and part of the reason is unions. I mean, the UAW had such a chokehold, which had artificially, we talk about wages, worker wages. They were so artificially inflated in Michigan that they were priced out of the market, and you got competition in not just in Mexico, but in southern states which are not right to work states.
We created an artificial competition. Because I don't think NAFTA worked out well for the country. I don't think WTO has worked out for the country. And I don't think Trans-Pacific trade is going to work out for the country. There's no measure.
So to blame unions, I think, is totally
Unions had a problem.
Certainly,
There's no doubt.
not
I'm not
everything.
gonna
Not
lie
everything they
about
did was great. But
Thank you.
to blame them and blame high wages as
Blame all of ourselves.
No, it's the downfall of the auto.
Let's get up and fix it.
Auto industry. Well, look, let's compare this to Germany. Their wages are almost twice. Auto industry wages are almost twice. Because they've structured their economy, and the workers actually have some power to negotiate. And so management actually has to deal with them on a way, and they invest in good factories that creates good jobs. Instead, we've let our companies just drive wages down.
I'm gonna go to get a drink. Before I do that, these people are so wonderfully patient. Can I ask anybody out here 2 questions? I was initially going to ask you, like, who in here is like making around the median income? But I'm actually more interested. You know, everyone talks and romanticizes in some ways the old industry in this city of cars, of the auto industry. Who here has family members that made their bones in the auto industry? That's astonishing. I would say it's about half the room. Well, let's move on to our next number, $94,300. That was the wealth of a typical middle-income family in 1983. By 2013, that number was up to $96,500, pretty much the same number. Those are, of course, inflation adjusted. All right, a related stat here, too. In 1983, the wealth of a typical upper-income family, $318,000. By 2013, that number had more than doubled to $639,400. Shikha, rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer, or they're stagnating in what way?
This is a somewhat bogus statistics, if you will pardon me for saying that. When home equity of middle-class people really did get wiped out, and upper-class people who had a much more diversified, I mean, you know, they were investing in stocks and stuff like that, they didn't get hit quite as bad. And so this is not a representative statistic of what real wealth or assets of families really look like. That process is already correcting itself. So if we want to get upset about the diminishing middle class, this is not what I would hang my hat on.
I have a very, very keen sense of these things, and I suspect that David's going to disagree with you on this.
In fact, I go exactly the opposite way. I think this is way too rosy of a picture, because what it also doesn't tell you is that debt for middle-class families over this base time period has almost tripled. So their wealth stagnated, but they are much more leveraged. They're exposed. They're in a much riskier place. So if they lose their job, they're in really, really deep trouble. So
David, why is that?
Because they had to buy a house. Basically, the cost of housing has gone up so much. And also the cost of healthcare and education.
It's gone down now. After the housing
these are stats over 30 years. It's still, housing is still way, way above where it was 70s, 80s.
Which is a good thing, because people build equity.
No, they're going into debt to buy it.
Here's your number.
Ask your people.
Gentlemen, Charlie LeDuff is going to answer this.
The lower class has lost wealth. Now they own like they owned in the 70s. The middle, I'm sorry, honey.
I'm sorry.
Look, everybody can keep repeating this and listening to your numbers. That's the fact. The middle class now has as much wealth as they did in the 90s. The rich are wealthier than they've ever been since the 20s, the era of the robber baron. I looked it up today before the show.
Well, I would like to check your sources, Charlie, because
I know, but hey, nobody checking you. Blather around, man. We all know how we're living.
All right, so we are going to start our Q&A period now. So raise those hands high if you have a comment or question or complaint for any of our fantastic 3 guests. You,
You guys spoke of the American dream earlier, and a lot of young people, I can say, probably in this room, feel that it's a little unreachable. What sort of advice would you give to a young person that would make it seem reachable?
You just gotta do for yourself. There's no macro answer. You know what to do. You already know what to do. Work hard, have those good Midwest values, don't spend more than you got, save for a rainy day, love your family. Just what your mom told you.
Well, everything ditto to Charlie, and I would emphasize 2 things, which is 1, build on your skill set. I mean, do not drop out of college. If you haven't finished college, finish college and don't get a degree in women's studies or literature, cultural studies, or what have you. The other thing is, do not get divorced. One of the single biggest predictor of poverty in this country is single parent homes. Because when that happens, the income gets distributed over several households. But it's actually very hard to fall into poverty if you keep a family intact.
We said the same thing.
We did.
I said read, you said get skills.
Yeah.
I said love your family, you said don't get the wrong.
Right, yeah.
I don't want David to ruin that moment, so you can talk to David after the show if you want to hear his answer to that. Let's move on to our second topic and get a little more granular here, the middle class in decline, and let's bring up our first number. Compared with Americans, Canadians are 1.8 times more likely to achieve the American dream. Are there any Canadians here, by the way?
Oh, hey, bro, get out.
Look, there are Canadians all over the place. I'm going to ask you a question about Canada. Do you feel that there's a better opportunity for you in Canada?
I think there's a lot of false notions about Canada. The fact that we just have free healthcare, which actually we don't. We do have to pay for healthcare if you make over a certain median wage. I don't consider myself middle class. My parents, these numbers that have come up on the screen, my parents have never earned that kind of money. We always, I say 20,000 or less between my two parents. But we always had everything we needed. And my parents never focused on how much we made.
Shikha Dalmia, we think of ourselves as an exceptional country. American exceptionalism says this can happen here, and it's much more difficult to happen than somewhere else. I mean, this Harvard University economist says that's not true.
Canada has really worked very hard in the last 10 years to create a business-friendly environment. They have cut their taxes phenomenally. I mean, here we are dithering. Canada's total tax rate, provincial and federal, is something like 25%. Ours is like 40%. And, so when we learn the lesson that we need to cut taxes, not penalize companies and profits, we might get the American dream back. And good hamburgers.
Yeah, I want you to go on that, but I want you to apply that to Detroit.
This whole slave to cutting taxes, let me tell you people something. Here's the deal in Michigan. Last month, Michigan businesses as a total paid the state negative $82 million. The month before that, Michigan businesses as a total paid the state negative $88 million. And the month before that, they paid the state negative $50 million. Ladies and gentlemen, business so far in one quarter has paid the state negative $250 million. Over 4 quarters, that's $1 billion negative. We're paying them to be here?
That is true.
Okay, well, nice. Because if a corporation, please, if a corporation is a person, I'm a person too, cut mine first. I'm not paying for them to do me the favor of employing me, or do you go to Washington, switch it, you go to Lansing, switch it, and we all pay for the dignity of eating.
I mean, the problem in Detroit is that this is a town of crony capitalism. I mean, it is a monument to crony capitalism, where the basic tax rates are very high for businesses, and then you have these very large business owners who come and get their special exemptions. And so Charlie is absolutely right. They don't contribute anything to the tax base of this economy. At the same time, they thwart these taxes, thwart little entrepreneurship.
We're building a hockey arena for a billionaire that owns a casino, 2 sports teams, and a pizza franchise. And the public money is coming from the Detroit public schools, which are bankrupt and some of the worst in the country. How in the world are we doing that to the children? And I'm the guy paying that money.
Yeah.
All right, but we're talking about taxes on the sinister mustache-twisting corporations. Let's do it on the individual level and look at our next number. $12. That's the average amount a middle-income family is estimated to save under President Obama's middle-class tax proposal. He's talking about middle-class economics in the State of the Union year. What is this? That's nothing.
It's crumbs. There's just not enough to cut. We've been cutting taxes. We've been following this trickle-down theory that you cut taxes, especially on the rich, and that's going to flow down benefits to everyone else. It has not worked.
No,
Our taxes are lower than in Canada's. We have less.
That's actually not true, but...
Yes.
Our receipts are lower than Canada's.
I mean, look,
And the tax code is high, but what we actually get from companies is very low.
Charlie, what have been the plans other than building new baseball stadiums to raise those wages and bring the middle class back to a city that once had a very thriving middle class?
Well, can we just say Detroit's the point of the spirit and look somewhere else, like maybe St. Louis that's on fire? Right, because there's a government there that can't support itself, so it enlists the police to shake citizens down, and they're angry. Can we say that $12 is the federal cut, but locally, I own a house, or the bank owns a house, My millage keeps going up, right? We got to pay for the police because the state can't do it and the feds can't do it, so let's jack that up. And let's save the DIA. Let's jack that up. Let's save Belle Isle. Let's jack it up. The water price is going up. Jack it. We're paying somehow.
Yeah.
Like Detroit is not alone. Baltimore's on fire because people don't have anything. Yeah, the cops and all that. That's a long time in this country. Like, we don't have anything, and the first people to feel it are the ghetto and the trailer park and the barrio, and you're starting to see them act insensibly. They're tired of it. And the middle class is the one actually getting taxed, because the rich don't get taxed at the level, the companies aren't, it's us.
David, I don't want to take readers away from this fantastic book that you can get on Amazon, but tell us at the end of this book how we solve this problem.
I think the first thing we have to do is make our democracy work so that people's voices are able to speak on power with the power of the rich and their money.
Sorry to do this job. What does democracy work mean? What does that mean? Let's make democracy work.
Basically enable everyone to vote, so you make them automatically register, you make it longer voting periods, and you start to have actual restrictions on the amount of money that's flowing into campaigns.
But we're not doing that. The Supreme Court said that's not happening. Let's be real.
And so from there, then you can start to do things like make some basic investments. We can start with universal
There's no limit.
Let me just suggest one thing.
But
I mean, David is absolutely correct. I mean, problem is the governance in this town, Baltimore, Ferguson. It's completely broken down. And one of the things that many of these cities have in common is that they are a one-party town. Look, the only thing worse than having Republicans in a city is not having Republicans, because what happens is you lose the system of checks and balances and accountability. That's part of the problem of what's happening in Detroit. The city council here is entirely Democratic. The mayor, there has been no Republican mayor that has been ever elected over here in the living memory of most people. And so what you need to do is restore the politics that'll keep a check on two parties that keep a check on each other.
Let me say, okay, look, because I get this all the time as a reporter. You know what it really is? That's code. Well, look at the cities. They're black Democratic cities. What'd you expect? Now dig this. Now dig that. I'm gonna get to you. I'm gonna get to you. But watch this. There were not one black Democrat that runs a Wall Street bank. There's not one black Democrat that runs the big three. There's not one black Democrat that launched us into Iraq without a plan and without armor on the Humvees.
Charlie, you bring us seamlessly to our next number.
Sweet!
8%. That's the change since 2010 in the average income of white U.S. households. For all other U.S. households, that number dips to negative 11%.
Part of the problem in this country is there's a huge skills gap. If you don't go to college in this country, your wages are going to fall. I mean, there is a huge premium now on a college education. Yep. But if you're not graduating kids from high school, how do they go to college? That's part of the problem here in Detroit.
Word.
I mean, the public school systems over here are so bad. I mean, graduation rate was something like 40%. I mean, that is 60% of the kids, you're consigning them to poverty. And I have to say this, the incarceration rate among African-American blacks it is a crime. It's unconscionable. And once you put people in, even for minor misdemeanors, you are ruining their chances of a job for their entire life.
David, this is probably one of the biggest reasons, right, of this number.
It's not just about education. It's also about the way we structure jobs and how much power people have on the job to negotiate and get a better wage. And certain people have more power than others. And what's even more troubling about these stats, that with basically minorities having no income gains, losing income, is that in about 2 decades, we're gonna be a majority-minority country.
Yep.
And if we don't find a way to raise wages for everyone, we are in really deep trouble.
All right, well, let's look at this next number. $17 per hour. That's the amount saved using a robotic spot welder instead of a human. The percentage of US jobs at a high risk of being automated, 47%. Does anyone in the audience fear that their job is going to be taken over by a gang of robots? You? What is it that you do?
I built a Jeep Wrangler.
So you work in the auto industry right now? What prevents that from happening?
Hopefully the union. I just put in the dashboards and it's half robotic now. So it could easily just do it with a robot.
How are you preparing for that eventuality?
Trying to save, but that's not happening.
Charlie, $17 an hour they're saving by these robots, and these car companies are going out of business.
And
why?
if they don't adjust the wage rates, there will be even more mechanization and there'll be even more automation. The unions in this town had actually sort of mortgaged their future in that they had bid up wages at a certain point and bid future workers out of the labor market. Now we are in a period of adjustment. I mean, if tier 2 workers were not being paid $15 and we're being paid $28, those jobs would not exist in Detroit, they'd exist in Tennessee.
No, not Tennessee.
Or Alabama, or Mexico, even Mexico.
Again, let me get this straight with you. The majority of jobs in North America for auto workers are in Mexico. They make $1 a day, $2 a day, $5 a day.
Okay, I have loved this conversation so much that I think that I'm running a little long. We want to have a Q&A. So, all right, let's go to somebody else.
So the building that we're sitting in almost went under, like within the last year. And if it did, it would have been like a lot of other buildings here, like the train station or the Packard plant or Belle Isle. How can we try and save a city that's maybe a half full of people? Or what do you attack first? How do you fill the city? And if you fill the city, does that fix the problems?
This is an interesting point. How do you get people back? And we see all these incentives here, new stadiums, light rail, et cetera. Is any of this stuff working?
You get the people back by fixing the basics, which is fix governance, as David said. You fix crime. I mean, crime rate in the city is still way too high. And you fix the schools. I mean, it's very simple, It's you don't have to build stadiums. You don't have to build a light rail system. You don't have to build a people mover, which costs $1.5 per ride in public subsidies.
$4.
I
looked it up today.
Yeah, $4 per ride in public subsidies. I mean, those are the kinds of things that bleed money out of those issues that it needs to go. The money needs to go.
That's big talk again. Big stuff.
Okay,
Look,
that's big stuff.
I'll give you number one if I'm mayor. Number one.
Fixing crime is big stuff.
Fixing crime. What?
Fixing schools is big stuff.
Fixing schools. What? Yeah. Here, number one. Get the cops straight.
That's crime.
No, it's not crime.
That is.
That's
law enforcement.
Crime is people doing stuff. What you can do as the mayor is how you respond to people doing stuff. What we did in the bankruptcy, we cut their pensions. Dude, a cop starting in Detroit makes $14.50 an hour. We're not going to fix it doing that.
All right, well, we're going to clean up the blood on the floor from this battle over the middle class. And I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, David, Charlie, and Shikha. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Business of Life. Thank all of you.
Business of Life is made possible by Better Money Habits. It's a free resource that helps you build practical knowledge and take control of your finances. Powered by Bank of America. See more at bettermoneyhabits.com.